Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today for Conversations on the Bridge. Happy MLK Jr. Day. My name is John Reed. I am the editor of the PD 16 Perspective, which is covering Stafford, Spotsylvania, King George, Fredericksburg, and Caroline counties. We'd like to thank the Spotsylvania NAACP, the LCPM Network, and PD 16 Concerned Citizens. And though we are meeting virtually today, this is a day of call of action. As the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, no celebration without legislation. And so today, we'd like to thank all elected officials who've come on here, all concerned citizens, and for all of you who are watching live, whether you're on Zoom or streaming on Facebook, we're on these respective pages. So as we begin this process, we'd like to go ahead and transition into prayer and go to Reverend Carl Pollard, who will lead us at this time.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you today for allowing us to come together in this special occasion as we reflect on the legacy that was left with us by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we thank you right now, Lord, for this occasion. Thank you for those who have come on board. We ask you, Lord, to bless the outcome of what we might accomplish today, that you will be in the midst of it, oh Lord, and our conversation will be as such that our people will be edified and that you might be glorified. So we thank you right now for all that will happen here today with these leaders. We ask you to bless the leaders of our community and all those who have come to reflect, but yet to move forward. So we thank you right now, Lord, for all that you're doing for us. We thank you for the president of the NAACP and all of these great leaders who have come, our dignitaries from near and far. So we thank you and we praise you in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Pollard. And for those, again, who are watching, we have a lot of great speakers on deck, and they're going to be giving the speeches talking about the need for us to go out and pursue voting rights and to discuss some of the critical issues that are happening in our respective counties. We'd also like to thank Reverend Gary Holland, who was monitoring the questions of Enough, and we'll make sure that the respective speakers or anyone who has questions will be a part of the process. At this time, it is a great honor to introduce the president of the Spotsylvania NAACP, Reverend Mo Pettway, who will be leading us in the program. Reverend Pettway, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody that's on the line here today. My name is Mo Pettway. That's why I have a little something I wanted to write down. So, good afternoon. I'm Mo Pettway, the president of NAACP and a civil rights advocate. I come to you today not necessarily to celebrate, but in a call to actions. And no longer is it good enough for us to continue to ride on the wave of the success of those before us and enjoying the benefits that they provided to us. It is imperative that we rise up and sustain and maintain some of the issues, some of the gains and benefits that we got for our forefathers. The enemy has raised his head again, people. And I'm here not only for myself, I'm here for my grandchildren and your grandchildren and children in the upcoming next generation. Our voting, our basic fundamental rights of voting is under attack throughout America, not only in America, but in Virginia also. So we must stand up, we must raise up, we must ensure that the rights are protected. It's not good enough to have a breakfast or have a lunch or have a meeting. We must emphasize, implore, encourage, and advocate that voting rights are protected. I had a sign put up there real quick. I just want to show it before we get into our other speakers. This sign right here says that on that day, we don't need to hear about another breakfast. We don't need to hear about another meeting that the senators are having. If the senator respect Dr. Martin Luther King, they'll pass the bill. If the senator respect Dr. Martin Luther King, they'll pass the voting protection bill. The other sign I have, you can't see, but I'm going to take a picture and send it later. I'm asking the Freelance Star to please put this in writing. Senator Tim Scott does not get a pass. Senator Tim Scott is an African-American in the Senate, a Republican. He needs to stand up. The community need him now. And we are asking that he stand up, right, and be a voice to pass the Voting Protection Act. Senator Tim Scott talks about his great-grandparents where they were slaves and he came up through the ranks. Well, today he needs to stand up and be accountable. And I'm asking the freelance starter, whoever get the how we can get there, is that he be challenged to stand up for America, voting rights. Thank you so much. I'm ready. Yeah, thank you so much. I thank you guys so much for here today. We got a lot of good speakers here today. I asked the speakers just to speak for, from 5 to 7 minutes at the most, or 10. However, we do want to hear a little bit though from Congressman Abigail Spanberger, who's a representative of the 7th Congressional District, right? We wanted to share about some of the things that she's doing, as well as the importance of protecting our voting rights. So if you don't mind giving Congress Abigail Spanberger a hand for me, if you don't mind, as she comes forth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pettway. Thank you so much to the Spotsylvania NAACP for hosting this event. It is my pleasure to join you all virtually, and I look forward to seeing you all in person in the near term. I am appreciative of the efforts and advocacy, the focus today. If we are to truly honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we must do so in action far, far beyond our words. And the actions that are before us on Capitol Hill are significant, they're important, and they matter. Just in 2021, 18 states have enacted 30 different voter suppression laws. And we see that the courts continue to have an assault on the Voting Rights Act, with compounding the disastrous decision that was Shelby versus Holder, which really opened the floodgates towards voter suppression, allowing states to kind of change and nuance many of their voting rules for the purposes of pushing people off the rolls, keeping people from voting, and just putting hurdles before individuals and their right to vote. So on the legislative front, there are a variety of different pieces of legislation. Mr. Pettway noted that the challenges exist with the Senate. As a member of the House of Representatives, I would speak to the bills that I have proudly voted on. H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We have voted on in the House. It has support in the House of Representatives. We are working for it to move in the United States Senate. H.R. 1, the For the People Act, which focuses on certainly elections-related anti-voter suppression law, but also reforms as it relates to ethical requirements and behavior of elected members of Congress. That bill also passed the House of Representatives and has stalled on the Senate side. The Senate has put forth a bill called the Freedom to Vote Act, which is a bill that they have been working on, pulling together pieces of H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancements Act, again, meant to get at and stop the wave of restrictive voting laws that we have seen taking hold in various states and in efforts at extreme partisan gerrymandering. This bill, together with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, would be fundamentally important if we are going to update the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. When we reflect back on that history, we realize and we understand that the civil rights movement, the work of Martin Luther King Jr. pulled together a coalition of people of conscience, a coalition of people focused on the value and the importance of our collective civic engagement. And as we look towards the future, it is unbelievably important that we not only take legislative action to demonstrate and affirm that every person's vote should be counted, but that we as legislators, as community members, affirm to people in our community that their vote matters. So I'm grateful to the NAACP for its nonpartisan work in getting people to the polls and encouraging people to vote regardless of whom they may vote for. I, at this moment, would also note that at the state level in Virginia, former Delegate Cole has been instrumental in so much of the work that's been done in the Virginia legislature to expand access to voting rights, to remove hurdles, early voting access, making it possible for people to exercise their right without those hurdles being put in the way. And so now we have to protect what we have achieved here in Virginia. Certainly, as we've already seen some executive actions coming out of the new governor's administration, and certainly we've heard some of the new legislators within the House of Delegates and their intents as it relates to voting rights. Again, as a member of the House of Representatives, I am proud that we have passed bills, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the HR 1 for the People Act, but it isn't enough if our partners on the other side of the Capitol don't take the same action and we don't ultimately get these bills to the president's desk. And so before we continue on with the discussion of what needs to be done, what is being done, and the progress and the advocacy that needs to help push it over the line, I would just note that one of the most spectacular honors that I have had in my short time in Congress was working with Congressman John Lewis, who was an extraordinary person and treated everyone as though they were old friends that he's known for years. He's the man that Dr. King called the boy from Troy when he first joined Dr. King's efforts and work on the civil rights movement. And as he was, as Congressman Lewis was suffering from his illness, and before he passed, he joined, and the last time he joined our Democratic caucus in a meeting, he, as he always did, was the conscience, was the driving force behind the need for us to continue on focused and united. And the last words I ever heard him speak, he said, and I wrote them down because it was John Lewis, and when John Lewis speaks, not only do you listen, but you take notes. He said, his final words that I ever heard him speak to us were, "Be brave, don't get weary, and let's continue to work." And so while I know that many of the people on this line have been working for years and years and decades, my commitment to you is I won't get weary. I'll continue to work. And for everyone on the line, as you can continue to engage in that advocacy and follow on in the legacy of the late Congressman Lewis, and certainly the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm grateful for all of the work that you all do on behalf of our community members, our Commonwealth, and ultimately our country. Thank you.
Right. Hey.
Thank you, Congresswoman, so much for that. And for those who know, in order to get these rights passed, call your senator at 202-224-3121, 202-224-2131. Call and let them know that the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Reenactment Act needs to be passed. Call them today and let that be known. Congresswoman, thank you so much for that. Well, we do have a questions. I believe we have Vince, I believe, who has a question for the Congresswoman.
Go ahead and ask on his behalf, John. I believe he wanted you to ask it on his behalf.
All right, fantastic. I will do so. Yes, Congresswoman. So we wanted to ask a question. What type of support can you give for us in fighting to preserve the teaching and history and of equity after the new governor's executive orders on the schools, which were put into enactment after he was inaugurated on Saturday?
So as a member of Congress, and certainly there's two different roles. From a legislative standpoint, I'm focused on the purview of federal legislation. And so while we can work to commemorate, we can work to honor our history through resolutions and legislation. In terms of curriculum, that is indeed the purview of our local governments, and in fact, not necessarily even the governor's office. But where I, as an elected member of Congress, and certainly someone within the community with a voice and a presence, wherever I can continue to lift up the voices, the stories of history long past and far more recent. Certainly within Spotsylvania, there's a rich tradition of purposeful social educational engagement that the Spotsylvania Sunday School Union, as an example, learning about the history of what the Sunday School Union did to educate Black children at a time of segregation is an incredibly important part of our shared history, in understanding the context in which that organization that we celebrate, that organization that continues to do good work in the community today, understanding the context in which that organization was necessary is important. So wherever I can partake or participate in community events that speak to the progress that we've made as a community, the incredible voices that stood up for issues of justice and equality throughout our history, recent and far into the past. I will continue to do so. And participating in events like today, I hope I can not only contribute something to engage legislatively, but also ensure that I'm hearing from the community and participating in that way. But I'm grateful. I know that we have some elected members of the school board on here in a personal capacity, and I think that that's part of that larger engagement is making sure that we're all paying close attention to what is happening across our local communities, the state, and ultimately the country, and certainly the role that the NAACP does in pulling that information together and conducting advocacy is an important part of that.
Wonderful. And what type of resources can we have access to? What do you recommend as far as resources for us in order to understand, direct us to any like attorneys or documents or anything of that nature, so we can learn more about that?
Yeah, so where I can be helpful, and I've got a couple of links that I'll drop in the chat, focused on some of the legislation that we've been working on Capitol Hill. Again, this is a place where the House of Representatives is united in our purpose to protect, particularly to protect the right to vote and to counter inroads towards suppressing the vote. So I'll put some resources and information in the chat for anyone who wants to learn more about those legislative priorities. But then also notably, during election season, when there might be kind of on the ground occurrences, I'm happy to provide resources to, there's always kind of election voter protection efforts. And I know the NAACP participates very strongly in those efforts, but that's kind of around election time when there is actual incidents of on the ground challenges, which, happen throughout Virginia regularly. And so it's important to make sure that those are reported quickly and aggressively.
Wonderful. And also, as you know, recently the Virginia district maps were redrawn. And there are a lot of people who may have questions about how the districts are redrawn, and they found a very complicated process. How can we be more educated? What are some resources we can have in order to understand this process and its importance? We understand where we can vote in the upcoming primaries.
So that's a great one. The short answer is it has been a complicated process. Virginia put in place for the first time a redistricting commission. So the redistricting lines were no longer drawn explicitly by the legislators. For those who were tracking the process, it went through the redistricting commission. The commission was ultimately unable to come to agreement. And as is stated in the law, when the commission doesn't come to agreement, then the drawing of the lines goes to the Virginia State Supreme Court, which is ultimately what happened. And so our lines were drawn by the Supreme Court. They were put out in final form just a few weeks ago. And so we'll follow up and send along resources where people can find the current maps. They'll be able to look up where they are in those current maps. Though if you are in Spotsylvania County, anywhere in the county, you are now in the congressional 7th district. And so that's a change because Spotsylvania County was previously split between the 7th and the 1st. If you are in Stafford County or Caroline County, you are also, the entirety of those counties are in the 7th district. Now, that's who you will find on your ballot in November. So you will be in the 7th district from an electoral standpoint. However, you are currently represented by the person who was elected in 2020 until January 2023. So as an example, I represent Virginia's 7th district. That's currently 10 counties, currently the western portion of Spotsylvania. I represent the western portion of Spotsylvania. My counterpart in the 1st district represents the eastern portion until January 2023. However, come election time in November 2022, anyone who lives in Spotsylvania, Stafford, Caroline County, and 8 other localities will see, Fredericksburg City, will see that whoever was on their ballot in the past, they are now in the 7th district. But we will send along some information related to that. Some of it hasn't been fully updated as they're pulling together the maps that go kind of street by street and home by home. Some of those resources are still being updated, but we'll pass along what's there so far. But they have made it a little bit simpler in that some of the counties, it's now the entirety of the county falls within the 7th district or other districts. And so at least for Spotsylvania purposes, that's easier. Everyone's the 7th now.
We thank you so much, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of the 7th Congressional District. Thank you so much for being here today. Reverend Pettway, I'll transition back to you, sir.
I thank you so much again, Congress. As we move forward to the next person, I do want you to remember that I'm asking you, right, that somehow relate there that Senator Tim Scott does not get a free pass, right, from the community. African-American community says that he owed his grandparents and people behind him an effort to do that. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Gary. Going to introduce the next person.
Got it. President Pettway, I do have a comment for you that was posted by James Robinson regarding Tim Scott. He says, we have no control over who the people of South Carolina put in office. Let us convey our concerns to that NAACP branch. So I wanted to read that comment and ask you, President Pettway, have we conveyed our concerns regarding Mr. Scott to his local NAACP branch?
No. At this time, we'll definitely want to get it out as much as broad as possible, right? The local branch is fine, but we need to put it out nationally, like they're putting everything else out, right? I hear him, and we also have the president, our executive director for the state of Virginia. I'm going to ask him, not now, but I'm going to compel him for the state of Virginia to reach out to South Carolina and to have them do that. We have our own executive director on the line today, which he'll speak in a minute. But right now, I want you, who I text you to introduce, would you do that for me?
Yes.
Got
it. Yes.
That's fine. Go ahead, Ms. Coleman. I'm sorry, Gary.
Gotcha, sir. At this time, we're going to hand it over to our next speaker, and that's going to be Mr. Daquan Love.
No, I'm sorry. No, you didn't get my text. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm not monitoring my text messages. We have a lot of speakers.
I'm sorry. Then I need to go ahead and do it. Then I'm sorry. Because we're gonna get. I want to talk. Love. Our next speaker will be Delegate Josh Cole, who was in the district, who really put forth an effort concerning voting and other issues, right? And then we'll come back to our executive director, Mr. Josh Cole, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think my camera is frozen. But if y'all can hear me, I'll still work on the tech issues on this side. But, but I am excited to be here with you all. Thank you so much for having me on. One of the things that I think is so key as we're looking at voting rights is on Martin Luther King Day, we have to talk about what Reverend Martin Luther King himself said. And there was a quote that he made. His daughter, Reverend Bernice King, used it just recently. And it's so fitting for right now. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, I think the tragedy is that we have a Congress with a Senate that has a minority of misguided senators who will use the filibuster to keep the majority of people from even voting. They won't let the majority of the senators vote, and they certainly wouldn't want the majority of people to vote because they do know they do not represent the majority of the American people. In fact, they represent their own states, a very small minority. And as we're looking at what's happening right now, we see that happening. It's relevant today. That was done in the 1950s when Reverend Dr. King made that statement. He stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and delivered a speech entitled, "Give Us the Ballot." And as we think about what's going on, since, I was a state representative, I want to talk about what's going on in Richmond. I know a lot of people are focusing on what's going on in Washington, D.C., but because there has been a transition of power and a transition of administration to another party here in Virginia, we are starting to see those same issues creep up in Virginia. We are seeing delegates introduce legislation to turn back the time of early voting. We're seeing them get rid of no excuse early voting. We are seeing them now trying to take voters off the rolls again. And so all the work that we fought for when I was in the House of Delegates is at the very end of being repealed. And so while we're thinking about who to contact, we have a wonderful Senate here in the Commonwealth of Virginia that is holding the line. Senator President Louise Lucas has already been on social media saying that she is going to fight back and that she is not playing any games with this administration. So I would encourage you, I know most of us are here in the Fredericksburg region, contact Senator Bryce Reeves. Let him know we're not playing with these pieces of legislation. Contact Senator Richard Stewart. Let him know we are not playing with these pieces of legislation. Contact Bobby Orrock and let him know we are not playing with these pieces of legislation. Contact Delegate Buddy Fowler and let him know we are not playing with these pieces of legislation. Contact Delegate Tara Durant and tell us we are not playing with these pieces of legislation. So let the people know that the time is here. We are looking for Lottie Dottie and everybody to have the right to vote. When we were deliberating on the Voting Rights Act in the House of Delegates, I remember Delegate Marcia Price, who carried the legislation, was asked a question by a Republican. The Republican said, "What more do you want? You keep introducing these pieces of legislation, making it easier for people to vote. What more do you want?" And Delegate Cia Price said, "We want everything. We want to make sure that every registered voter has no barrier to getting to the ballot." So that's what we want. During this time on this Martin Luther King Day, I have said it before, and this is the same for Democrats as it is for the Republicans, but let not his name come out of your mouth if you're not fighting for voting rights, a livable wage and affordable housing, women's rights, and racial reconciliation. Why is that? Because these were all the things that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King fought for while he was still alive. And so don't put his name in your mouth if you're not fighting with us, if you're not fighting to get the things that the people need. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for having me, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Cole, for being such inspiring words and giving those resources we can reach to. At this time, I'd like to bring on the Executive Director of the Virginia State Conference NAACP, Mr. Daquan Love. Mr. Love.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you, President Pettway, Congresswoman Spanberger, former Delegate Cole, and everyone else. I really just want to echo the sentiments that have been already shared with you. But I've come here this afternoon to remind you that on today's celebration of the life, legacy, and the history of Dr. King, let's not make this a day of service, but rather a day of advocacy and action. That is what Dr. King lived his life, and a life of advocacy and action, in leading the Montgomery bus boycott and leading the modern civil rights movement. He led a life of advocacy and action. And so I'm grateful to the Spotsylvania branch, to our president, Mo Pettway. I see a lot of NAACP peers on the call. Thank you for your leadership and your support. As the executive director of the Virginia State Conference NAACP, the governing body overseeing over 110 units of the NAACP here in this Commonwealth, representing 90% of the geographical towns, counties, independent cities, and municipalities across this Commonwealth. We've got to make sure that we protect the right to vote. As you all know, the Virginia NAACP, in addition to supporting the Voting Rights Act of Virginia, last year we were very instrumental in the passage of what is now in its second year of a constitutional amendment that would guarantee the right to vote and enshrine it in our state constitution. This year, that bill, Senate Bill number 21, is extremely important and vital. That bill is going to be really important for us, and that's our number one legislative priority as a Virginia NAACP. You know, last year we had a historic level of Black voter turnout, and a lot of folks aren't talking about that, and I want to talk about it briefly. It was the NAACP spending over $2.5 million to turn out Black voters this year. And some folks look at the political outcome and, you know, we're nonpartisan, but this was the largest turnout of Black voters in an off-year election in the history of our Commonwealth. And that's something that you should be proud of, and grateful to the efforts of the Spotsylvania branch NAACP. I knew you all did a lot of voter registration drives and efforts. You know, the NAACP registered over 2,306 new voters last year. But beyond what we've done in the past, right now in this present, what we've got to do is fight for our voting rights tomorrow. And yes, while it's important that we pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, while it's important that we pass federal legislation, while it's important that we get rid of the federal filibuster in the US Senate, y'all, we've got work to do here at home. And so tomorrow in the Senate Committee on Privileges and Elections, they're going to be hearing the constitutional amendment that would put the right to vote and guarantee it in our state constitution. Y'all, our U.S. senators, they're doing what they can do. Our congressional representatives, they're doing what they can do. But y'all, we got to focus here at home, where we have, unfortunately, new leadership. And despite who's in the executive mansion, despite who holds the gavel in the Senate or who holds the gavel in the House of Delegates, we have work to do to protect the gains that we made over the last several years and to make sure that we move this Commonwealth forward and in the right direction. So I would implore you and encourage you, and on this MLK Day, let's not just talk about my fraternity brother and talk about the service and talk about his life and quoting some of his famous quotes. You know, sadly, his life has been reduced to one speech that's been reduced to one quote that's been reduced to one day. When in reality, we know that he was a man of advocacy and action, whether it were in the city of Montgomery or leading the sanitation strike in Tennessee or marching in the city of Detroit, where he first gave his I Have the Dream speech months before the March on Washington, which he actually was not scheduled to give the I Have a Dream speech that day. It was Mahalia Jackson who reminded him to tell folks about his dream. Y'all, we've got to move from service to advocacy, to action. And I'm grateful that you all are here today, but I would encourage you to do what you can in your communities, to go down to the General Assembly. Let's look at the pieces of legislation. Let's advocate on behalf of Black and Brown Virginians, because while it's easy for us to say, oh, Senator such and such and such state, oh, Senator Joe Manchin is holding up voting rights. Senator Sinema all the way out there on the West Coast. What are you doing here at home to talk to your delegates? What are you doing at home to talk to your state senators? And how are you advocating against the draconian new leadership that wants to turn back the hand of time? Ladies and gentlemen, all politics are local. We've got to start local. We've got to keep our eyes on the prize, and then make sure that means making sure that we protect our civil rights here at home, protect our voting rights here at home. Ladies and gentlemen, we can, we will, and we will do this together, thanks in part to the leadership of Mel Pettway and the Spotsylvania branch of the NAACP. If you're not an NAACP member, you ought to be. You know why? Because I have found in my history and in my life that we've got to make sure that we're advocating and we are doing what we can to make sure that Virginia moves in the right and better direction. And we can do that through membership in this association. Go ahead and visit our website, naacpva.org. You can sign up for our action alerts, and we'll send you a list of legislation. You'll get updates via text message, email, however you want to get them, so that you can stay abreast of what's happening at your capital in Richmond, but moreover, so that you can advocate on behalf of your communities. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you. That was Dave Quan Love, the Executive Director of the Virginia State NAACP. Thank you so much for a very powerful speech. And I'd like to transition back to Reverend Pettway for an introduction of the next speaker.
Yes, thank you again, Executive Director DeQuan Love. You guys, DeQuan Love have been in there for over 20-some years. He's been working for us at the NAACP, from the youth chapter president all the way up to Executive Director of the NAACP. And we thank him for his leadership and his wisdom in assisting us to be what we want to do. I will ask you, sir, if you don't mind, I know that it's local and all the other stuff, but right now we need those others to vote for that bill before we get out of the way. So please, I'm asking the state to help us. And we'll do for you, but please help us with that other locality. Let them know that guy don't get a free pass. Anyway, again, Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Next, I introduce Dr. Woodson. Dr. Ernest Woodson is an activist in the community. He's on the executive board of Fredericksburg NAACP, but he's always there, and I appreciate him. So, Dr. Woodson, sir, Dr. Woodson.
Thank you, President Pettway, and to all the great speakers that have already spoken. I have to admit that I've learned so much more just listening this morning than what I even wanted to bring to the table. But that resounding information that I do choose to bring is that we must begin at home. Even the Bible speaks about charity begins at home, and knowledge and wisdom of what we're going to do nationally begins at home. I enjoyed with our former delegate Joshua Cole had to say, with our state executive, DeQuan had to speak, and everything has just been awesome. I can't sound it enough. I know there's going to be a lot of redundancy that's being spoken, a lot of echoes, and we need that. But more than words, we need action. Faith is an action word. I'm a pastor of 30 years, so I'm always talking about the gospel. But we as civil rights leaders need to be accountable. Anytime Brother Pettway needs something done, he knows that he can cross counties and call on me. I work with Caroline County, I work with Stafford, I work with Spotsylvania, I work with Fredericksburg, and I work with all the clergy. A pastor, I say, of 30 years again. So anything and everything that we can do, just continue to sharpen yourself and get an understanding about what it is that we are fighting for, and don't just keep resounding talking about the same old, because it is time to get busy. We have to put our action and our feet where our mouths are. And a lot of trickery is going on and in the higher levels. And because it is, we just have to be smarter. We have to listen and react, or act as we listen. Vigilant we have to be. The Bible, again, I have to speak about, that's my faith. It's Christ himself said, watch and pray. We have to watch and pray and be vigilant while we're praying, because there's a lot of work to be done. So I don't want to go on any further, but I thank you for this opportunity again, President Pettway, and I'm sorry to Congresswoman Abigail Spanberg. I enjoyed you so much. We've met before, we've talked before. Continue to keep on keeping on for us. And if I've missed some names, charge it to my head and not my heart. But I'm a great supporter. I'm a team player, and I do what I can. So those of you who don't know me, call on my name, ask Brother Pettway who I am, and those of you who do know me, continue to pray my strength in the Lord as I continue to fight for the cause. I am a freedom fighter. Thank you for this opportunity, Pastor Pettway.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ernest Woodson. Thank you so much for your service, what you've done in the community. Again, we just wanted to remind people, while the speakers, if you do have any questions, please make sure to drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure you get those answered. It's time to go back to Reverend Pettway for the introduction of the next speaker.
Oh, yes, sir. Our next speaker will be Elisha. She's from the downtown Fredericksburg New City Fellowship. She has a couple of words she wants to share, and then we'll move along from there. And I'll text you the next one. Yes.
Morning. Thank you, everybody, for all those inspiring words that you've shared. I appreciate during this time that our focus is on advocacy and action. My name is Alicia Sessi Khalid. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at New City Fellowship Church. Our vision is to be ambassadors of reconciliation for Jesus Christ to all ethnicities. Yesterday, our pastor spoke on the vision using the reference Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law. In the summer of 1993, our pastor, Bob Becker, and his family visited New City Fellowship in Chattanooga. The church's cross-cultural vision, passionate yet practical preaching, creative blend of different musical styles, along with the congregation's unashamed affection for the gospel and each other, reminded him of his church that he grew up in. He had a vision for a church that modeled that vision and that mission, and reached out to other families and ministers to help him implement this vision in Fredericksburg. Throughout the years, New City has always sought out ways to be a reconciling force in a local community through conversations on race, community service, and starting a nonprofit aimed at empowering and equipping at-risk youth in our community called Open Hand. Yesterday, he challenged the congregation by asking us, what was our vision? I interpreted the question as, where do we go from here? Our church has done so much, but where does our vision call us next? Reverend Dr. King was faced with the same crisis in 1967 when he gave the prophetic speech, where do we go from here? He began with all the progresses that civil rights had accomplished in the last 5 years. Laws have been passed, Businesses had been pressured, culture had been challenged, and Black businesses were gaining attention and capital. However, he never lost sight of the fact that there was still work that needed to be done, that the movement could not become stagnant. Even more so, he never lost sight of the fact of the criticisms of the movement, who saw all the successes and wanted him to stop. A quote that stuck out to me was, "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." So the question that I ask myself now is, how do I use my power to interpret the demands of justice as an ambassador of reconciliation in my community? And the question I ask you is, how do you use your power to implement justice and voting rights today? Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
All right. Thank you very much for the speech. And so what we want to do is just put out a question to the pastors that was asked in the chat. And what we want to ask is, a lot of people are asking, well, how do you get the churches to be, the congregations of churches to be more active in the local communities? And they're absent from school board meetings and from board of county supervisor meetings. So to the pastors, so if it's one of us that can ask, how can you get the congregations to be more active in the community?
Can I respond to that?
All right, right ahead.
Okay, I don't think there's no one individual answer to that. I just believe that it's a conglomerate coalition of everybody, because the ministry itself, whether you know it or not, the pastor may be the CEO, but it's still a community effort. And the bottom line is redundancy and education and continued conversation and grabbing people by the hand and walking them over to the voters booth and variations of things of this nature, because we have so many people that have a lack of knowledge to what is really going on in the local community, and continually emphasizing that the city council, the board of supervisors, the board of education, every time that they have a meeting, be there, be there, be there, be one of the numbers in there, listening and have something to say, questions to answer and ask. But as a whole, we just have to continue as a community to just keep holding each other by the hand, keeping each other lifted in prayer as we begin to do things physically, and not let it just be about conversation, but let it be about action.
Thank you very much for that. And at this point, I'd like to go and transition to the next speaker, who is our local pastor and community activist, which is Mel Turner. Pastor Turner, I transition over to you, sir.
Hey, Reverend Hashmel, are you there? That was a handoff to you, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone assembled. It is definitely an honor to be in your presence here today. As one of the senior statesmen here locally, I have been in this fight for a long time. 72 years old, a freedom fighter, but not yet tired. We are concerned about our young people getting involved, and it is our responsibility to reach out to them and to encourage them, because they are our present and our future. I commend our young people at the youth chapter, the college chapter here at UMW, how they have really gotten involved, taken a leadership role, really impressing us to the point where we realize that hope is still alive, because we are able to pass the mantle along to them, and they are doing a magnificent job here in the city of Fredericksburg. So we commend them on all that they are doing at UMW, and we encourage you to reach out to the youth in your churches and your communities. Somebody out there needs to have an encouraging word, and they may be just waiting for you to say, get involved, because that is what is so important. We all must be involved in this, because we are all in this together. Thank you for this time, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Reverend Turner. And I know, Pastor Holly, you had also a response to the question previously about getting congregations involved in local churches.
Thank you, John. I was thinking about the question that Nicole Cole posted And I serve as a pastor. Our church is in Dumfries, Virginia, but I do serve as pastor to a church in the local area. And just from a pragmatic standpoint, one way that churches will become more involved is if more effort is taken by elected officials locally, school board, board of supervisors, congressmen, congresswomen, to leverage the technology now to educate people on these very complex issues. There are many people in churches. There are churches on this line. There are hundreds of people, possibly thousands represented by those that are on this line, but there are people that don't really understand the detail, the intricacy, the complication of redistricting, of upcoming elections, of who's running for what, et cetera, the issues and where people stand on the issues. And more table topic conversations need to be held with churches by elected officials to explain to people what these situations really mean, to explain to people in as nonpartisan a way as possible what's going on so people can make informed decisions and then begin to engage because they now are engaging from a place of understanding. And we've done a lot of that, and we have seen a tremendous uptick in the number of people that are volunteering across the communities, engaging with voter registration drives, et cetera. But it starts with these community conversations with people in our churches to articulate to them in layman's terms what's going on with local politics. Because as we all know, it can be very complicated and confusing. And a lot of people will just stand back and say, you know what, I want to stay away from that because I don't really understand. So Nicole, that's my suggestion, is that in your area where you serve, if you haven't already, set up some of these sorts of community conversations with the churches in your region to make sure that you're able to explain to them what's going on with the school system, with the school board, with education in your region. And that's the surefire way to begin to identify people and to encourage people to engage locally. And that should happen across Planning District 16. Okay, so I just wanted to share that comment, John. I'd asked Mo who our next speaker would be. He didn't respond, but since I did speak to Nicole Cole's comment, I'd like to ask Nicole, who serves on the Spotsylvania School Board, if she has any comments now. If so, Nicole, please unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Reverend Holland, and thank you, President Mo Pettway, for putting this together. I wanted to say from Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. And I just wanted to speak. I'm so happy that Daquan Love had mentioned that this be a day of advocacy and action, more so than service. And actually, when I speak to a day, this is the days of advocacy and action. So not just today, we all need to be more engaged and in advocacy, and then the action steps that go with it in order to reverse the trend of what's going on in our public school systems, in our local governments. And we need people to engage and to be in attendance, present, whether you are physically present or engaging via email, letters to your school board members, to your local board of supervisors members, to understand what's going on. And I appreciate, Reverend Holland, your suggestion. And most definitely, we will, I know locally here, I will engage with some of the other school board members as well as board of supervisors members to get something organized to be able to have some Zooms. If not, go into the churches. It's a little bit, with all that we have on us right now, and I know you know what it is, just starting on the school board, it has been very overwhelming already, but our community needs to be the eighth person on our board in order to impact and put pressure on the majority that we currently have, who are doing things that are not in the interest of our school children. And so I would say that I know that voting rights and protecting our voting rights is priority number one, statewide and nationally. Our second priority, and we need to be able to make sure that we are working on both is preserving our system of public education, which is being attacked very aggressively. I mean, it's been under attack for years by the GOP, but they obviously have a new energy. They have taken the power, and they are attacking and planning and have planned to dismantle our public school system. So we need the community to engage, to understand what's happening and what they can do in order to create a barrier to that happening, because 90% of the school children in our state attend public schools, and we need to protect their education. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. That was Nicole Cole of the Special School Board. At this time, we'd like to bring up Don Shelley of the Spotsylvania School Board member. So Ms. Shelley, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I thank you all for being here and for all of your support. Ms. Cole said it well, and I just know that everyone here in this meeting supports public schools. So I just ask that you continue your support of public schools. Of course, I'm asking for Spotsylvania, but of course, across our state. We are in a situation of people wanting to dismantle public schools, and that's my opinion. This is what it looks like. I just hope that all of us that know that public school is the best way for our students to be educated, so that we as Americans have an educated populace, that we need to continue to support public education for the children of Virginia and across this amazing country of ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was Don Shelley of the Spotsylvania School Board. And at this time, I'd like to bring on Mr. Bob Martin of the Spotsylvania Democratic Party.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mo, thanks for setting this up. This is a wonderful forum. And I'm gonna, you all know I'm partisan. I'm very partisan. I'm the chair of the Democratic Committee in Spotsylvania. So I always lead off saying that. But what I see happening in Spotsylvania at the school board level is just part of a program, an approach, a policy approach, not only here in Spotsylvania, but across the country in a lot of places, where it's pushing an agenda that is not only anti-voting, but it's also anti-diversity. It's borders on white supremacy type issues, and it's not good. It's not a good thing. You know that better than I do. We need to fight back. We need to fight as hard as we can in as many places as we can. I'm going to make a pitch for the special election coming up here in Livingston District. I don't know how many of you are in Livingston. I am. I've already voted. And it's important that, to me, that this election is being held in the chair of the school board, Kirk Twiggs' district, so that hopefully we will get, we're looking to elect Ray Bell, plain and simple, get him elected and send a message to Mr. Twigg that you may not be as bulletproof as you think you are. So we're working hard with the campaign to send the message and get people to working on it. So yeah, this we're livid with what's going on. So we'll be in there fighting every chance we get. Of course, they're not going to make it easy. They're going to make it harder. But that's part of the agenda. That's part of a nationwide agenda that's going on right now. So keep fighting. We got to keep taking action every chance we get. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I was Bob Martin, chairman of the Spotsylvania Democratic Party. At this time, I'd like to call on Dr. Rita Daniels-Netz of the Spotsylvania School Board.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I wasn't ready to prepare to speak today because I'm just getting in from out of town. But I just want to echo everything that Ms. Shelley and Ms. Cole had mentioned regarding being involved, advocating for our children and our teachers. And so I do appreciate the comments that came forth from Bob Martin as well. One of the things I will say is to, and I think Mo Pettway said this before, write to your Congress people, your congressman and congresswoman, whoever that may be, and let them know that we are here fighting for education, because I know we just had some executive orders that just came down. And so that's going to be a tough road to, ahead, because at this point, we don't know what our board is going to do because they do have the majority. As far as mask wearing, as far as CRT, those are some hot topics. And I know MLK would not want our history put under a rug. So I would implore every citizen in Spotsylvania County, especially those that are part of the minority history, to fight, to advocate that our history be taught in these schools. And I'll leave it at that because I do appreciate what Miss Nicole Cole and Miss Shelley, Miss Dawn Shelley spoken before. And I'll just leave it at that. Just continue to fight, continue to show up at our meetings. It's so important. And just thinking about MLK, he was everywhere. Everywhere there was an issue, he was there. And I believe that's how our Spotsylvania County citizens, every time there's an issue that comes up at the Board of Supervisors level, at the school board level, we should be there, advocating, making our voices heard. And that's all I have to say on that. So I look forward to the fight forward. Thank you, Mr. Pettway, for putting this on.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd like to interrupt because we're getting ready to close down, but I'd like to have the former chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Braswell, say something. And then after then, I'd like for Mr. Reed and then Gary, and then I'll close it out if you don't mind. And then we'll close out Mr. Braswell, John Reed, and Gary Holland, and then we go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pettway. I really appreciate the opportunity to just share a few things. This is a really great program. We do have to engage at the lowest level. Everybody, you don't have to have a spotlight to let your light shine. You can let your little pen light shine and make a difference in our community. If it's just going around and passing out literature or getting petitions signed, there's something all of us can do. And that would be the first thing that I would mention. We always are waiting on pastors or those that have a title to get work done. And I will tell you, the greatest work is done by those of us that don't have a title. So I would say to everyone that's listening, you have power, and just let your little light shine, and then God would receive the glory. I was sharing with Caroline County NAACP in a candidate forum that, in my opinion, voting rights is very important, but the greatest civil rights issue of our day is access to an equitable education. And that is the main effort all the time. And so we have to ensure that we have an educated populace, because when we have an educated populace, then we can do so much more. So I just thank everyone for their comments so far. I'm really exceptionally proud of our school board members that are representing the minority. I'm honored to call them my colleagues and friends, and I know they have a really tough work, and I want to do everything that we can to support them in this unusual set of circumstances that they have to operate from. I want to also commend Dr. Daniels and Ms. Shelley for working with me on the previous board to make sure that we did something that was significant in our community, which was change R.E. Lee to Spotsylvania Elementary. Thank you very much, and God bless y'all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Braswell. And thank you. As we come to the conclusion of our program, we want to thank all of our wonderful speakers for coming out today and having this conversation on the bridge. Even though the conversation was on a physical bridge. We were being a bridge to call that action. So thank each and every one of you for being a part of today's program. But I thank all of those who are watching on Facebook, streaming live. Thank you. Thank those who participated in Zoom, and also for the LCPM network for making this possible. Spotsylvania, NAACP, for all those who came on, and also for Pastor Gary Holland of Enough. Again, please call your senators at 202-224-3121 and call your senators. Make sure to pass the John Lewis Voting Amendment Act. Make sure to call that number again, 202-224-3121, and let your voice be heard. The Freedom to Vote Act. No celebration without legislation. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Tag, you're it. And at this time, I'd like to transition to Pastor Gary Holland of Enough, and we'll move for Q&A from there.
Got it. It is very quickly. Today's discussion was about voting rights. We talked a lot about advocacy. We talked a lot about what's going on in our schools and our communities, and this has been amazing. Personally speaking, I just want to read the names that Josh Cole read out when he was encouraging us to contact elected officials to make sure we do all we can as individuals, as citizens, to make sure our voices are heard, to let them know that we want the John Lewis Act passed. Senator Richard Stewart, Senator Bryce Reeves, Delegate Tara Durant, Delegate Bobby Orrick, Delegate Buddy Flower, Delegate Phil Scott. Those names are in the chat and the comments for the Zoom. Please grab them. All their information is public, email addresses, phone numbers, etc. Let's make sure that we contact them, let our voices be heard. That's how we change things in this country. Let's not become frustrated and think that our voices are not heard, because they are, especially when we come together and we speak as one. So thank you all for coming out today. Thank you, President Pettway, for the vision for this event. Thank you, John. And this has been great. And it'll be online and Facebook. You can always go back and watch it later. Over to you, President Pettway.
Hey, let's give everybody a hand. Come on, we gotta give everybody a hand. Give everybody a hand. Just everybody a hand. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary, for co-hosting and inspiring. And I've been asking him. He said, I mentioned it. He said, yeah, let's go for it. So I thank you so much and your encouragement. I thank the perspective, John Reed. Thank you so much, sir, for you allowing us to be on your network. We thank you so much for that day. We thank all the elected officials, Abigail. One thing I learned about Abigail, for those who don't know, if you call her, if she can, she will come. I mean, so she has been there for us on several other events, and she come out today. We thank you so much, but we still got to advocate. I know you're tired and all, but we need you. You're elected official. You are there with them. You see them, senators. You see them. Grab one by the voice and say, hey, we need them to do that, right? So anyway, so thank you everybody so much. Bob, thank you so much, Bob, are always there and stuff like that. Mr. Turner, Nicole, Sean, Dr. Daniels, or Braswell. Now I want to call name anyway. Everybody on the Robertsons, those you guys, you see those things over there? They've been fighting forever. The Robertsons are there, and I appreciate them. They were the NAACP when I first came. They've been fighting forever. Thank you so much. And Judy, she's always there. I mean, matter of fact, she was on a crutch and came out to the march. So thank you so much. So with that said, I just want, and Mr. Chair is out of Richmond, you guys. Field Chair out of Richmond. How you doing, buddy? Field Chair, and Josh is a dynamo. I mean, I'm so impressed with Josh Cole, man. If I could get him elected today, I'll just, he's awesome. And I appreciate his work and do. I mean, Josh Cole, we definitely appreciate him. And all those people that came on board today, we thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I just want to open the floor for if somebody got two that haven't spoken, got 2 minutes, because we should close it before 2. They got 2 minutes. They'll offer if they wanted to say something before we could get ready to close. Anybody have any comment for 2 minutes? So
hi, this is Tom Robertson with the Spotsylvania Sunday School Union. And I just wanted to remind everybody that politics is another form of war by any means necessary. And I'm not sure if everybody understood that, but politics is another form of war by any means necessary. And the other thing is, you don't have to have a child with your last name in the school system. As long as there's an African-American child, you got a child in the fight.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
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 You got a child in the fight.
All right.
And
okay.
That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mo, for letting me.
Amen.
Thank you, sir. All right, Vince.
We have I just want to bring it back to local elections. We have a very important local election coming up. If you live in the Livingston district, please get out and vote. We have a candidate, Mr. Bell. I think he's running against a Mr. I forgot his name, but please look it up. If you need any information on it, feel free to contact us and we can talk about it.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Anybody else?
Hey, President Pettway, there are a couple of elected officials from Stafford County that have been on. But we need to call on them, but I just want to call their names out and give them an opportunity. Board of Supervisors member Tanisha Allen is on. She was on, and I don't know if she still is. If you are there, Supervisor Allen, please, if you have any comments or thoughts, we'd like for you to share them. Also, Maya Guy is on from the Stafford School Board.
Yes.
In personal capacity. If you're on, Mrs. Guy, please, you too, share your thoughts or comments with us under 2 minutes each, please. So, Ms. Allen, you first, and then Mrs. Guy.
Hi, thank you, Allen. I'll keep it brief, as you said. I would just say at this point, the reason we're at this point where we are, we're having all these conversations is we have failure of leadership on every level of government and on every party. Because if there were true leaders, we wouldn't even be having this conversation in 2022. And the fact that our leaders are not willing to step up and make those difficult choices the way Dr. King and the leaders in his generation did, it is just a shame. And the only way that we can get past this, as everyone has already stated, is you have to go to the local level. You can no longer look to the state and to the federal level. You have to start at the grassroots and organize from there and get the support. And then you move up to the state and then you move up to the federal. Because if you look for a top-down approach, it's going to be forever before you see that. As you've seen now, we're being held hostage by people that truly don't care about voting rights, is how I look at it. And if you do care about voting rights, you get into the community, you get involved in local government, and you start to change there. And when you change from the local government, then you will see the incremental changes that will happen from the bottom-up approach. And that's from someone who spent 2 years in the wilderness with a bunch of Republicans.
Amen.
Ma'am, Mrs. Guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I think this is a great discussion. I just want to echo everything that these other school boards mentioned, but also in like the executive order that just came out, obviously all school board members in Virginia are getting inundated with calls for or against, and people are incredibly upset. And what I continue to remind people, as I listen to how upset they are for whichever way they go, but in particular for the parents who are fearful and want to maintain our mandate, is at least in my county in Stafford, the school board member who won, who I would say is in absolute favor of removing the mask mandate, won by 41 votes. 41 votes changed the makeup of the board for the school board staff. And if 41 more people had come out and voted for someone else, then we would have a board that could ignore this executive order, which there is a legal leg to stand on, since the order is based on a health mandate that expired in July 30th, I think, of 2021, right? He didn't even write the right mandate order to not pay attention to. So like, we have options, or we would have options. We just have to remember that just because it's not a presidential election, it's still incredibly important, if not more important, because all politics are local. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to get ready to go. This is what I want to say before I turn it back over to Mr. Reed to log us out. But it's very important, and we know all of this is important. First of all, we're looking for February is Black History Month. We're looking at having 3 different community conversations in February. We'll get the word out and let you know about them. Get with Gary and we're going to talk about it, or at least 2, right? Zoom, and there'll be Zoom, but we're looking to do that. So please stay tuned for that. Visit your NAACP page. Stafford has one, Frederick has one, and Spotsylvania has one. If you live in one of those counties, you should be a member. Join one of those organizations to be a part of that organization. Because if you think about it, it is the oldest and largest civil rights organization in the history of Spotsylvania County, of America. And so please join that as well. And what I'd like to tell you also, right, is if you see someone tomorrow and they tell you how great a breakfast they had, you look them straight in the eye and say, okay, now what you gonna do? Don't accept I had a good breakfast with a good speaker and good. That's not good enough anymore. Our rights, our basic fundamental rights is under attack. Lastly, I'll say is that, again, thank everybody so much. Please pay attention to what's going on at your local level, the school board as well, and the board of supervisors. I'm going, when I leave here, I'm going to the bridge for some pictures, so we can have some pictures to go along with this stuff. So if you're interested in going to the bridge, man, buzz, right?
Oh, can I make a comment real quick? Can I make a comment real quick?
Who's that, Carlos?
Yeah.
Yeah, real quick.
It's imperative that we support our sisters on the battle line at the school board, the members of the school board that spoke today, because they're out there by themselves. We don't have to get up and talk. Everybody's not going to be the speaker, but they need to show up in numbers. So if you can attend yourself to the Spotsylvania County School Board meetings, have somebody as a representative, because they need to see our faces, they need to see our bodies, because that's the important thing. If we don't have numbers there, they're going to think we don't care. So come out and join us, as we need to take this thing back, and I commend those ladies that are on the board, because they're catching it. So we got to support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. Thank you, everyone, so much for being a part of this wonderful conversation on the bridge. Again, I want to thank Reverend Pettway, as president of Spotsylvania NAACP, for putting this all together. And again, this will be on our streaming networks on Enough, a Spotsylvania NAACP page, as well as the PD 16 Perspective program. Again, thank you for the LCPM network putting this all together. And we look forward to hearing from you soon and seeing what you do in the communities. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Yes, thank you. Yes, all right.